Up next, Authentically Detroit welcomes guest host Chase Cantrell, plus co-founder and CEO of Brilliant Detroit, Cindy Eggleton, to discuss how they're tackling low literacy rates and neighborhood blight. But first, this week's hot takes from Detroit News and Bridge Detroit. Alleged theft from Detroit Riverfront Conservancy could reach $40 million. And Wayne State University police dismantle encampment. 13 arrested. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Founded in the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show.
Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from Cass Corridor at the WDET studios. We are a content partner to bridgedetroit.com. I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
And I'm Chase Cantrell.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. Orlando started his new job today. Woo-hoo. Yay! At Outlier Media. So Chase is filling in as guest host. And to be clear, Orlando started his new job as executive director of Outlier Media today. We're also joined by Cindy Eggleton, co-founder and CEO of Brilliant Detroit, an organization committed to tackling low literacy rates and neighborhood blight. Chase and Cindy, how is this day finding you?
Today's a great day because I'm with the two people I really admire here.
Oh,
Thank you for having me. I mean it.
We're so happy that you're here with us.
Yes.
and I'm doing great. I mean, this is the beginning of Pride Month. You know, June is here. Lots of celebrations happening. This Saturday, there was an amazing celebration at Spotlight. So this is going to be a month full of parties and remembrance and, you know, history of the movement and the protests that happened that started the movement. But, you know, just happy to be in June.
Yeah, I'm so excited about Pride Month. As you know, my son is queer, and so I always think about the fact that the meaning of pride and the fact that he grew up having so much shame about his identity that I didn't know about. And when he told me, I almost burst out in tears when he told me how he felt living, and to see him so proud and so out and so, you know, celebrated actually for who he is one of the most beautiful things. I celebrate people being able to be who they are as God made them, and know that, listen, just as you are, it's a beautiful thing. So
and having supportive parents is extremely important. So
huge part of it.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I feel like, you know, when Philip came out, at first he came out to me first, right? And I didn't tell anybody. He came out to me first because he watched Empire. And his name came out to Cookie, and he said, "Hey, listen, I can come out to my mouth." And you know, if you ever wonder the importance of art in helping direct people's paths, so he came out to me, and I didn't tell anybody because it was not mine to tell, right? Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to give him a chance to tell family members and stuff. And then I realized even after he told other people, I hadn't told other people. And it was important to me. So one day on Facebook, I decided that I was going to come out as the mother of a gay son so that he understood that I was not ashamed of him. And it not only gave release to him, but so many other parents started reaching out to me saying, "Hey, can I talk to you about my child?" It was really a shock to me to find that people were struggling with it. And it was something that I haven't done in a long time, but I do want other parents to know that it's not only liberating for your children, it's liberating from you to celebrate who your children are, whatever they are doing in life. And certainly Pride Month is an opportunity for parents to celebrate, allies to celebrate, and of course, people who are LGBTQ to celebrate, and not feel as though they're being stigmatized, and it's kind of getting harder right now, isn't it, Chase?
I mean, it's interesting in that there were some rights that were won over the past years, but there's always a backlash anytime that rights are expanded to a new group of people. So I mean, there is still an intense fight to make sure that we are continue to be seen as people, and that our laws reflect that. But in some other ways, I mean, we do see culturally an expansion of acceptance. So I mean, Motor City Pride is coming up this Saturday, and I always tell people you don't have to be part of the LGBTQ community to go to Pride.
Right.
It is a celebration that welcomes everyone. So I mean, there is this balance of the fight continues, but we still have these moments of celebration.
Yeah, and Chase, when I first met you, you were not as fully out as you are right now.
Really?
No, you weren't. I mean, you didn't talk about it. I don't think you talked about it in the public domain as much as you do right now.
That's true.
And to see you not only there, but also in love and engaged.
Engaged, yes.
That is so beautiful. When you got engaged, I just got so excited. And, I don't know how long you've known Chase, but he smiles a whole lot more than he used to.
People say that.
There's a joy in you. It's a beautiful thing. I just was in Miami for a convening, and speaking of parents, Dwayne Wade was there talking about his daughter coming out and talking about it from a parent standpoint. It was really, truly beautiful. And they've just launched a website called Translatable, which I thought was an amazing thing, primarily for parents.
Yeah. That's good. He has gotten so much heat, and Gabrielle Union has gotten so much heat for simply loving their daughter. It is so crazy to me that people have, ascribed all of these terrible motives to them. I admire the way that they have done what they've done, as well as Magic Johnson and other parents who have a very public platform in the, toxic masculine world of sports, to be able to stand there and love your child openly. I think whenever you do that, you give permission to other people to do the same. And so happy Pride Month, Chase. I'm really excited about that. I have a funny story to tell you. We're going to get into the story. But so my granddaughter, Luna, one day she was at my house and she was laying on the floor looking at something. She says, Gigi, you have ants. So I was like, oh my goodness, I've got to go get the ants up and stuff like that. She says, no, it'll kill them. I know how to take care of ants now. So she went and she got some food to feed the ants. And so, when you become a grandparent, you realize that it's hard to tell your grandchildren no about anything. So as I watched there, as my granddaughter was patiently feeding the ants, bragging about the fact that she knew how to take care of ants. Like, we have cats, baby. You don't have to take care of ants. We have pets. So we ended up getting an ant farm. And Luna ended up, finding some ants to put in our ant farm. But she told me, but we need a queen because for eggs, we need a queen for the babies. And so I said, okay, well, I'll order some ants. So we got some ants. And while we were out of town, the ants came. And so on Friday night, she called me and she says, Gigi, how are the ants doing? And I said, well, I'll let you know when we get back. And so Kevin put the ants in our ant farm to join with the other ants so we could finally have a queen. Well, I should have done a little bit of research.
You can't mix them?
Because the ants that we had were really tiny. The ants they sent us were really big, and apparently they didn't like each other, and they killed each other off. So now we have nothing but a dad and ant farm. And I learned a lesson, and now Luna's going to learn that I don't know how to take care of ants. So that's my funny story, my lesson learned this weekend.
It feels like a metaphor.
It does.
It does. And it also feels like you're a cool Gigi.
I don't know if she's going to think we're cool now that the ants are all gone. It's like, let's start again. Anyway, so we just wanted to start with a little bit of humor. It was a long week last week and a long weekend. So just glad to be back and actually with friends. It's always good to talk to you, Cindy. I remember when I met you. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
I will never forget it.
2016, I believe it was, or early 2017, and you were just getting started.
That's right. We were just getting started, and the thing that I will reveal to the listeners is I'm sitting across this incredibly vibrant innovator. And I said, we're just getting started. Donna said to me, you're going to come to my community. And I said, well, we're not ready. She said, oh, yeah, you're going to come. And she was right. And so, and a little bit about what we do is I'm co-founder of the organization Brilliant Detroit, and we exist to create what we call Kid Success Neighborhoods. Neighborhoods where kids and families have everything they need in the middle of the neighborhood.
So we're going to get into that
in
a minute and go into great detail. But what I'll say is what we say in the Black church community is name it and claim it, okay?
Yeah.
And so I named it and I claimed it, and you did come to the east side. I really want to get into, because it's an exciting story, but before we get into that exciting story, we've got to cover a somewhat less exciting story, a hot take. Alleged theft from Detroit Riverfront Conservancy could reach $40 million. This is by Nolan Finley and Daniel Howes. And Chase, I think we're going to have some choice words from this article. I'm not sure if we've covered the summary, but anyway, the amount of money feared embezzled from the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy could reach $40 million and rank among the city's biggest scams, according to 4 sources close to the situation, a shocking amount for a nonprofit nationally recognized and supported by Southeast Michigan's leading philanthropist. The Conservancy placed CFO William A. Smith on leave. He has since been dismissed, and disclosed earlier this month that an investigation into their potential financial mismanagement that has since been turned over to the FBI. The investigation includes allegations of falsifying bank records, securing loans, and pocketing the proceeds, and investing in private, for-profit limited partnerships for more than a decade. The burgeoning financial scandal amounts to an embarrassment for the Conservancy, with roughly $170 million in total assets, according to federal tax records and its major philanthropic supporters. Among the concerns here is that the alleged impropriety can tarnish Detroit's image burnished by its downtown revival, a reopening of the Michigan Central Station, events like the NFL Draft, and Conservancy itself named Best River Walk in the United States 3 years in a row. We've got to avoid a national black eye, said David Egner, CEO of the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. The Wilson Foundation has made a $40 million commitment to the Conservancy. Egner added, we have to make sure this project is looked at for its contribution to the community and not this short-term disruption. He cautioned the $40 million allegedly lost to this scandal is a guess. It's all an assumption and speculation until the FBI finishes its investigation. We're all waiting for that. An FBI spokesman declined comment when reached Wednesday. This was last week. Mm-hmm. I believe it was on Saturday they announced that Mark Wallace, the CEO, had stepped down. Yes. And there's an interim president who's been named. But in the same article last week, Chase, some of us had some concerns about some of the messy stuff that they kind of implied that those investments could have supported Black real estate developments and that we needed to shore those up. It almost seemed like they were passing on the financial irresponsibility of the Riverfront Conservancy to somehow suggest that Black developers were also unstable. Can you talk about that a minute?
Sure. So this is from the Detroit News, as you said. There's been a lot of coverage of the Conservancy from every major paper in the city of Detroit. This is the only paper that referenced something like this, and it says, that the funds might have been invested in for-profit Black developers working in Detroit, without any naming of who those Black developers are, without any citation of the source of where they're getting this information from. So in some ways, maligning Black developers without, providing any support, right? And for those who understand how real estate development works in the city of Detroit, it's difficult for any developer to do development here. It is extremely difficult for most Black developers to find capital in the city. So to throw this out there without, again, any source, any citation, any background is at best.
It's racist. It's racist.
That's where I was going.
You would not. You would never do this for a white developer. That. Well, some of this money may have been invested in white real estate developers. In fact, you would never call them out by race.
Ever.
To do that. Yeah. And then say, oh, I'm colorblind. You don't get to do both. It was offensive. I saw that first thing in the morning, and I emailed a couple of friends and colleagues, and I said, have you seen this? Because I'm thinking to myself, this is actually horrible. And what it does is it just, casts suspicion on everybody.
It does. So I say, there is a group of Black developers in the city of Detroit who are, we are reaching out to the Detroit News to figure out what our next steps are about this. But whoever this source is spoke to multiple papers, but this is the only paper that decided to publish it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say this because Authentically Detroit is much less cautious than you are. Nolan Finley, that was a racist act. You shouldn't have included that. Your name is on it. You are the editorial page editor for this newspaper, and we need to hold you to a higher standard than this kind of racist speculation. The fact of the matter is, here you have the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, which allowed $40 million in theft. And all you hear is a bunch of foundations basically exonerating the institution from these errors and saying, we're going to double down on our investments. I wonder if that's something that would ever be done if my organization was found to have engaged in this level of impropriety of $400,000. And so I think the other thing is it's almost like the clique sort of standing for itself and not really asking itself some questions.
There's no way this could have happened at any smaller scale nonprofit, right? Like all three of us run nonprofits at this table. All three of us serve on nonprofit boards. At a nonprofit of this scale, with its own finance committee, with its own outside auditor who also didn't catch this, right? And this auditor is the auditor for many organizations around the city.
Who's the auditor?
What's the name?
George Johnson.
Yeah.
They
George
changed
Johnson.
their names, you know.
I didn't know that.
I was at Mackinac and they say that we've rebranded as JGC
Oh, yeah.
auditors. And I was like, oh, really?
They've used that before. They've been using that.
Well, they told me when they were up there that they had rebranded. And you notice that the audit cites George Johnson, not JGC.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they must have known this was coming. I'm just saying.
But it blows my mind that this could have happened over 10 years, right? Just the amount of detail within our organizations that we go through looking at these audits every year, and that this could have just slipped through is beyond the pale.
Yeah, and I think that there are many people who feel as though there needs to be a greater level of institutional accountability than to have the board chair basically get rid of the staff and stay in place. And I'm not one to make those decisions, but I would like to believe that, and see, one of the things that sometimes happens in situations like that is they sort of let them slide and then they tighten up the reins on all of the rest of us and say, you know, now this is happening with these guys. Now you're going to have to jump through more hoops. And so I really hope that's not what happens. I hope that there is institutional accountability. Let's not spread the blame. This is what the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy allowed to happen. But I was really gone.
I was going to say, but also, this is what happens when you have these kinds of organizations and the money is flowing outside of government, right? Like we know that, you know, corruption happens in government too, but this scale, when you have conservancies, when you have nonprofits who are running these kinds of programs with this much money flowing through, in some ways you're asking for corruption as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's what they talk about, public-private partnerships.
That's right.
I don't know that this would have been avoided if it was not government, but I think that the reality is that if it's going to exist in this way, you have to have more than a good old boys at the table, because there tends to be a relaxing of standards and expectations, this expectation that we trust each other and, you know, these are all my good friends. You really do need to have the kind of accountability where people are willing to hold each other accountable. And that doesn't happen in good old boy situations. It doesn't matter what kind of good old boy situation it is. I can't say that there have not been governmental administrations where $40 million has not been misappropriated, because I don't know that that's not true. But I do know that when it is not when it's separate from government, then there should be additional scrutiny.
That's right.
That there are layers of scrutiny that tend to happen, although, you know what, we have found ways around that with our government, and that's for a whole nother show, Chase. That's for a whole nother show. Let's get on to the next story. This is, oh, wait a minute. Is it time for us to take a break? I think we are going to take our break right now and come back to our next story.
2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the East Side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit. By Detroiters, for Detroiters.
As we come back, Wayne State University police dismantle encampment, 13 arrested by Janelle D. James. Wayne State University police officers moved in early Thursday and dismantled an encampment set up by protesters opposed to the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. University spokesperson Matt Lockwood told Bridge, Michigan that Wayne State police made a total of 13 arrests. Protesters set up the camp 1 week ago, erecting roughly 30 tents outside of State Hall. By mid-morning Thursday, the camp had been cleared and the site blocked off with caution tape, but students moved their protests to a street nearby outside the university's STEM Innovation Learning Center. The protesters were heard chanting, "Free, Free Palestine." Since the encampment was established on May 23rd, it presented legal, health, and safety and operational challenges for our community. WSU President Kimberly Andrews Espy said in a letter to the community, the encampment on Detroit's campus was formed 2 days after the University of Michigan removed an encampment on its Ann Arbor campus nearly a month after it was erected. Police arrested 4 people at that encampment. Protesters repeatedly called on the university to divest any funds that they are helping to support the war. A leader of the Wayne State protest told Bridge on Tuesday that Wayne State University students set up the camp in solidarity with the U of M encampment and similar ones across the country. So what do you think about this?
So, I mean, we're seeing violence, these sort of violent ejections of people off of these campuses, and it's unsurprising because we have campus police. And when I think back to the history of when campus police came about and why they came about, and Donna, you might have more color to this than I do, but just thinking about the protests in the 60s and 70s on campuses.
I was in elementary and high school, but go on.
I'm just saying that you know the history.
I wasn't born yet, no.
But I mean, if you have police institutions on your campuses, what are they there for, right? So some of the Wayne State students were talking about police and riot gear. Why are you here in riot gear if there is no riot, right? And I mean, this is why the president of Wayne State University wasn't at Mackinac. They had to cancel or pivot that particular event that was supposed to happen on the island because she was taking care of this situation. I think it's a disgrace, right, to the kind of protest culture that we have in the United States and have had for many, many years, that we are not permitting our students to be able to express themselves in this way against a very, very unjust war.
And what are your thoughts on that, Cindy?
I tend to agree with Chase. From everything that I have seen and heard on this itself, it feels like it was an overreaction to what was happening. And we are, as a country, whether you agree or disagree with whatever side, we were made to have peaceful protests.
Yeah. I mean, I feel as though free speech is the First Amendment, right? And free speech also means the freedom to congregate, the freedom to protest, the freedom to do all of those things. And those freedoms have been routinely denied people who are taking positions that are in conflict with the people in power throughout the history of the United States, whether it is civil rights movements where people have been, hosed down and, dogs sicked on them, or even the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests, which became violent when police and agitators got involved, where certain people were allowed to bring guns that they were not even allowed to have and kill people and get acquitted for the murders or the killings, whatever you want to call them. There's people who still believe that January 6th was simply free speech and are defending what Donald Trump did as free speech. But somehow, and I want to say this, and it's not going to necessarily be popular in all fronts, but I came of age in the 1980s. I was in college in the 1980s. Thank you, Chase Cantrell. And in the 1980s, I learned about this thing called social Darwinism from some of my Jewish classmates. Okay, social Darwinism, which is the survival of the fittest race of people. Charles Murray a Jewish man, wrote a book, The Bell Curve. He and I can't remember the co-author of the book. And the whole point of the bell curve was to demonstrate that Black people were not equal in intelligence and capacity to white people. And that speech was allowable. But how many Black students who have expressed any feelings about Israel, about people who are Jewish, are not just being shut down, but being expelled, losing their degrees, not allowed to speak at commencements? It's fine. I hated that speech. I felt violated by that speech. Not just by those people, but I think what I'm saying is that when I hear people say, well, Jewish people have always stood on the side of civil rights. No, not in my lifetime. When I was at U of M, there was a professor from the law school who was arguing against affirmative action, saying Black people did not belong at the University of Michigan Law School because we weren't smart enough. And this was a Jewish person. I don't single him out because he's Jewish, because I heard about this. I went to a Catholic high school and I heard this kind of thing all of the time. Because people can be horrible regardless of where you come from, okay? People can say horrible things regardless of where you come from. But when a Black student says it or when a Muslim student says it, all of a sudden it becomes not just horrible, but it becomes illegal. And it's never made illegal when it's hurting me and mine. It's never made illegal when somebody says people came over here and they got job skills because of slavery. That's not illegal. It's not illegal when people say, any things about Mexican people being rapists or drug dealers. It's only illegal when privileged groups or people who the United States has decided to privilege with protection are the ones under attack. Either it's free speech or it's not. Either there's freedom of protest or it's not. And so I feel personally offended. I am actually an instructor at Columbia University, which was the first place that brought police on campus. One of my colleagues, who I don't know, walked outside his home videotaping it, and he was arrested outside of his home for holding a video camera. We have to be very careful when we look at this. You had a whole university president haul before Congress, losing her job because she refused to say some speech is not allowable. And so we are also using the power of Congress to influence this. How many of university presidents are being influenced by Congress? How many of them are being influenced by wealthy donors to say things that are ultimately more harmful to the peaceful coalition between Jews, Arabs, and other people than if they just stayed out of it? Because when people feel like they're being punished for talking about a war where 35 people have died, then, and that's called anti-Semitism. If you don't agree that it's okay to kill 35 Palestinians, what are people saying about being supportive of Jewish people? I think it's a really horrible kind of way to try to, defend people's rights by making people feel as though speaking out against other people means that you hate those people. If to love Jewish people means to love or support the killing of 35,000 Palestinians, if to love Jewish people means that we're okay with killing babies and innocent women, and to point out, politically, these people did these things in the past, we have to be concerned about people right now. So I have a lot of emotions. It flared up in my family chats, and where I had family members who were saying, look at the other side. And, I think there's only one side, and that's free speech. I think there's only one side, and that's peace. I think there's only one side, and that is love. I think there's only one side, and that is equality. And we can dislike what people do, but in America, we always let them say it. And I think we've got to keep doing it even when it's uncomfortable and even when we don't like it. And the idea of health and safety, tell me what those health and safety regulations are. It's ridiculous to me. So I know I went on, but this is very, very emotional.
No, and it's
we need
important
to talk about it and put it out there.
Because in fact, I think a lot of people in our community are afraid to talk about it. Mm-hmm. If you are in any sort of influential position in the city of Detroit, knowing that there are Jewish donors, Jewish philanthropists, there was someone I used to work with, a colleague who we were talking about something completely different, and he brought up, and I want to talk to you about the war. And it was a shift in conversation. We've never talked about anything about Israeli-Palestinian policy before. But it's the kind of thing where, it is straining relationships, I think. And I think that people are, some who are afraid and some are pressured not to speak publicly about this. But I actually think that it's more important that we do continue to talk about it. I know our city council passed a resolution in support of peace, even though people are saying, well, why would an institution so far removed from the Middle East actually pronounce on something like this? I think it's important for every American to know that our money is supporting the war, right? The munitions that are being used against Palestinians are funded by the American government and continue to do so. Benjamin Netanyahu is being invited to Congress, and not just by the current speaker, but by the minority representatives in the House and Senate as well. So, this is the American government putting their stamp of approval on mass killings that are happening in Palestine. So I think those students have every right to speak up. This is their country. They see what's happening. They don't like the direction in which, again, our tax dollars are being spent and our politicians are making policy. And if we don't give them that latitude to do that, I think that we're creating a danger for their future, right? They should be able to express themselves in ways knowing that they are future policymakers. They are the ones who will govern this country in the future.
But all of our futures, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there have been coalitions of Black and Jewish and Arab people working together for so long around peace. And those coalitions are being destroyed because motives keep being overlaid and all of these insinuations. If you say this, you mean this. If you say this, you don't care about. I care about human life. I'd like to believe that if I was alive, and I said this to a person who was running for office, I'd like to believe if I was alive in the 19th century, I would have been on the side of abolition. I like to believe if I was alive in the 1940s, I would have be on the side to fight Nazis. Not the many, many, many Americans who were colluding with Nazis. And we don't talk about Nazism and how well it was accepted by many people in the exact same party who are now turning around and saying, you know what, you're Nazis. I'd like to believe I would have fought that. And I'd like to believe I would have fought for civil rights and desegregation in the 1950s and the 1960s. And in the 1980s, I would have fought against divestment in South Africa. And just like I'd like to believe I was that person, actually, I did fight against divestment in South Africa. I fight for this. I fight for freedom of people. There are political considerations and things like that, but when a bomb is there, I'm a pacifist. I was not happy with the Ukrainian war. I didn't think it made a whole lot of sense to arm the Ukrainians to go against Russia in the way that we do. I did not think it was going to produce peace or prosperity for the Ukraine. I was open about that. And I'm open about this. I don't think this is the way to go about dismantling hatred. You cannot dismantle hatred with a bomb, a gun, and a bullet. You cannot dismantle hatred with hatred. And Martin Luther King was famously quoted for saying that. So I say that, and I want to make it very clear. This is not said out of hate. This is not said out of a desire to be insensitive to people who are Jewish. I have counted many Jewish friends over the years, and I hope to continue doing that. But I hope that my opinions about what's happening right now do not make people feel as though they can no longer count me as their friend, because I am standing for peace and I am standing for the right of people to exist free in this world, free of oppression, free of having their children killed. And quite honestly, those freedoms were taken away long before this war began. We've got to be honest about that. Now, we can come up with every justification we can, because there's no time when we oppress people where, number one, we don't dehumanize them to the state where they don't deserve freedoms. And number two, we don't find a justification, but all people deserve to be free. That is my stance, and hopefully it is something that we can share if you're listening. And if not, then I apologize for offending you, but I'm not backing down. So with that, and I hate to be so strong about that, but it's just, someone says, silence is complicity, and I'm not complicit. I think I'm on the community advisory board for Wayne State University. I was supposed to be at that event that was on the island. And so, as a member of that board, I have a responsibility to communicate not just support, but also dissent. So with that, now we're going to turn to our friend who has done amazing things in this community, Cindy Eggleton. you have done so many amazing things, and you were starting to talk about your vision for your work and how you can get started. Can you just once again acquaint us with how you began this work? And even before you do that, can you just give us a little bit of your biography and how you got into Brilliant Detroit? Because you've been at this for a minute, right?
Yeah, sure. And I just want to also thank both of you and thank for being in the conversation, because we need to have these conversations. It's as simple as that. I call it being open-eyed. Mm-hmm. And we don't, like I said, we can all have different views too, but we should be able to have conversations to move forward on the side of peace, period. So I'm Cindy Eggleton. I am two things about me. I'll do that part, and then I'll talk about Brilliant Detroit. One is my most recent gig prior to co-founding Brilliant Detroit was I was a funder. And as a funder, I had a $60 million portfolio, and it was the best of all worlds, and sometimes it wasn't. I didn't feel we were really getting to what we needed to get to. The second truth about me is I'm a first-generation high school graduate whose family came from poverty. My mom was in foster home till she was 12, and so being in the world and seeing things a little different is in my blood, is the bottom line. So we started an organization called Brilliant Detroit. And Brilliant Detroit is dedicated, I started talking about it a little bit earlier, to build what we call kid success neighborhoods, where kids and families have everything they need in the middle of the neighborhood. That sounds like a great effort. The most important thing about what we do is that this is an organization that is built from and by Detroiters, okay? And so we first off go listen into communities. Donna, you've been familiar with that, and understand, do they want something like this in their neighborhood? What should it look like? We hire from the community, and in fact, this is built from that. 33% of our staff are former participants. And that is really what has led to a tremendous amount of success. We've been in existence for 8 years, and in that 8 years, we've worked with 22,000 people. We've shown 3 reading levels of growth, as well as significant or very significant improvement in education, health, family support. It's a belly to 8 type of an approach. So we work with kids and adults together, and the adults only. We believe that parents or the caregivers are the person that should be in charge. So I'm really proud of what's happened right now. We also have 200 partners in the work. And as a result, the other piece of it is we've been invited into 31 other cities and 5 countries.
Wow.
Again, what I want to say is this is built on, when we do go to the other cities and countries, this was born out of Detroit, which I love as somebody born in Detroit, but it's also born out of people coming together to do what they want for their community and kids.
You know, it is so exciting for me for you to share that perspective. I always think that Detroit is a very innovative city. We're very creative here, and we have exported more than Motown, more than assembly lines, more even than Detroit techno music. We export new ways of approaching problems, and your way is very Detroit focused.
It is.
Because you are leveraging vacant homes as an opportunity to invest in the community. And that's not something every city is able to do. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Donna, I'm really glad you just said that, because that's why I love that this is born out of Detroit. Detroit is the innovation. It's also a city of people that know each other. It's a very small city based on lots of relationships. And if you know Detroiters, there's nothing better, really and truly, in my heart, even though we're going to other areas. So I'll talk a little bit about it. We after we have committed to a neighborhood, which we don't do until we've talked to the residents in that neighborhood, and that means long-term residents, short-term residents, we get a house that has been, is in disrepair, is what we call it right now. I was just at the Chandler Park location today, where when we first went into that location, you didn't know where the walls were. That's how bad it was. So you kind of give a feeling of hope in the neighborhood, that you're investing in that neighborhood. We then form an advisory from the neighborhood, and Detroiters do. They have a million ideas, which I love. And we actually say we're set up funding-wise to make sure that the residents have a voice in what happens. And I'll talk a little bit about that because it's really important. And then we build it out. We also build programs. There's certain programs we have at every site, and there are certain programs that are advised from the community that this is what we need more. Once we've been there for a while, we also do resident design for a side lot. So we're really trying to create spaces that people deserve. And I'm going to say this. I went over all the statistics, but the most important thing I think that people find, and maybe this is in other cities, and I'm going to find out, but this is a Detroit thing, they find each other. Mm. That's the thing that happens through our orange doors. They come in, they find other neighbors, they find other people that care, and from there it builds. And so it's been a beautiful thing. I had no idea this would grow like it did, but it has.
Well, that's an amazing story. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to bring Chase into this conversation.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
And we are back with our co-host Chase Cantrell and our friend Cindy Eggleton from Brilliant Detroit. And Chase, you are a real estate developer, or you teach real estate development to people who are interested in doing this work. And Cindy talks about getting these homes that she says are in disrepair. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just sort of this interesting concept that one way to redevelop homes is for community use, and another way is to make money off of them. And I thought it might be interesting for you guys to talk about the distinction a little bit.
Yeah, so I lead an organization called Building Community Value. We do teach Detroiters how to do real estate development, but the way that I talk about it is people come in with all kinds of reasons. Like some people want to build community centers, right? Some people want affordable housing. Some people want to build generational wealth, and some people want to build wealth. Full stop. So, it runs the gamut. But for those who want to do community centers, finding the funding is often the most difficult part. So I'm just curious, what advice would you give to folks that want to build something like you just described, right? A center of the community where people can find people.
Yeah, so I want to just say this is a major issue, and we help a lot of organizations or smaller grassroots on how to go about doing that. And it isn't easy. I don't want to pretend that it is. And even when we started, I took a 75% pay cut in order to do this. We're not there now. And I think there's a couple of things. I think it is attracting it to a bigger vision of what it means for community. I'm working with somebody right now, sort of behind the scenes, who has this amazing space, who approached me on how do I do this? What do I do? And he's got all the assets in terms of the vision for the community and how does that look. And I think sometimes it's access to individual donors as well as to grants, et cetera, so that you can get sort of that startup and then leveraging, and you know this probably better than me. Look at, I never thought I would be in development, right? I actually said this is not what I'm going to do, but with as many locations I'm wrong, is how can you raise enough revenue in order, like in the renovation, if there's some way to do that so that you can keep sustaining it.
Right.
There's both the creating it and then there's the sustaining it. Well, we've found a way to do that at an affordable rate because we're working with different partners. And also what we're looking to do, and anybody can reach out to me at info@brilliantdetroit.org, and I will send them a replication guide of how we've gone about doing it. That said, when you're doing one or two, it isn't easy because somebody doesn't see that full vision. And that's how funding, unfortunately, works. And so I don't want to pretend like it's an easy thing because I get people all the time saying, I just need $100,000, and it can be hard.
And many times it's in neighborhoods that funders don't have faith in, or you might not be able to find that individual donor who cares about that particular space.
Neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of the things that my hope is because when we started Brilliant, nobody had any clue what we were talking about. They were like, you're doing this out of houses? Do people live there? What are you doing? Is to actually bring a better light on how this is a great thing for communities. And I think within that, could be some innovative ways to get some pooled funding for others doing this. That's how I see it. There's a couple of things happening like that in other cities that I think bring that together, and I'd like to see about how could that be brought to Detroit, because I really believe in this idea.
Have you seen the government step in at all to help with these sorts of innovations?
So I'm going to say straight up, when we first started, we felt we didn't want the government in it at all.
Okay.
And the reason was I had to stand in front of people and say they had a choice and they had a voice, and I couldn't say it in certain ways unless our funding was set up where there was enough unrestricted.
That makes sense.
This last year, however, we did get funding from the state, and I think there is a way based on being able to publish some papers that the state could potentially fund other small, like pooled together.
No, what kind of funding did you get from the state?
We get funding out of the education budget.
Awesome. Because I want to take a minute to talk about education and literacy. Before I do that, I just wanted to acknowledge this aspect of education. Your Chandler Park home is directly across the street from a school. And while you may say it's a home in disrepair, we just call it vacant, right?
Right.
And so that means that children were going by a vacant home right across the street from their school that is now a resource for families right across the street from the school. I think that is the most exciting story about the location there. And you say that this was initially formed to address literacy issues. I'm wondering, what does that mean? How you do it?
Yeah, we do 3 things around literacy, really a lot of things. Literacy is raised not just by literacy programs, but also education, health rather, and really family support. It's holistic. There are 3 distinct things that we do, and I'll talk about what the results of that were for last summer for us across the city. One is building a love of reading. That can mean making book-rich homes as well as for us. And that's relevant. People look like you in the books, et cetera, that everybody has a library. The second is making literacy a family affair. And that means a lot of different things, sort of showing, providing kits, helping celebrate literacy, reading, et cetera, as well as we do have adult literacy programs that are offered as well. And then there's straight up tutoring, which is really a mentorship type effort where you're learning technical skills. But I think for literacy, you want to do much more than just building the technical skills. You want to build a love of reading. So what the result of that was this last summer is across the city, at every one of our locations, we had all-day literacy programming, which also was fun. We had Men's Read Day. We had all kinds of different things that were called Black storytellers. So it was a celebration as opposed to a deficit. 92% of kids that were in this effort did not have summer slide. 85% of kids raised their reading levels. And so really looking at this much more holistically and looking at it again with the goal of building a love of.
I love that, because I think a lot of times because of test scores and these mindsets about reading by 3rd grade, reading is an anxious kind of thing. There's a lot of anxiety. And when kids fear failing, they're much less likely to enjoy doing anything, whether it's reading or math. I think we teach with anxiety. I think about the Waldorf model that doesn't even begin teaching reading until 3rd grade, I believe. I had a friend who had a child in the Waldorf schools and removed the child and moved them into public schools, and this poor child was not reading. And the schools were like, we expect the child to be reading by now. It's like, no, I was in Waldorf, and Waldorf doesn't even begin teaching reading because it's not the early bird reads. I started reading when I was 3.
Yeah, of course you did.
But that was because I had an older sister, and they were teaching my older sister, and I was in the room. And when they didn't understand is I was also learning. And so, because I didn't have any anxiety, right? I was just sitting there being a little kid.
But, well, I think that reading, first off, I've seen miracles, literal miracles, kids that were going to be held back for a second time in kindergarten, that with just somebody sitting down with them, and as opposed to it being almost a discipline, it was something to build a care about stories, etc. And so we've seen those miracles. And I think you're right that sometimes we're always looking at everything as a deficit. The other thing that I think you're pointing out, reading and a love of books, etc., should start, I call it, in the belly, right? Like you should be doing storytelling and enjoy, all of those things are really important for it. So that's how we step into it.
Yeah.
How do you animate it? How do you feel part of it, no matter where you are?
Right. And, people don't have to read at the same time. I read very early. My sister read, I think she started really reading when she was in second grade. They call her Judge now, right? So it's not like she couldn't catch up and do whatever. I think there's this idea that there's a race, and there's not. When you're not learning reading, you're learning other things that contribute to reading. And when people aren't anxious about teaching you, then you learn naturally. Like you said, this love of stories. You don't have that fear of a book. It always scares me when I see children afraid when you open up a book, because I have always had such a passion for reading.
So it's funny. There's a colleague of ours, Lauren Hood. She started interviewing people, asking, what she was trying to examine what Black excellence is, or Black thriving. Sorry, Black thriving.
Thank you. Not excellence, thriving.
Not excellence, thriving. And one of the things that kept coming up in just these narrative stories, she was just interviewing folks, right? And people would tell their life stories just sort of organically. People had encyclopedias in the home, like the old-fashioned, like actual encyclopedia sets amongst a lot of the people that she was interviewing. And even thinking just through friends in my own life, just like being able to take something off a shelf, even if you don't know what you're reading, right? Like just the challenge of saying, all right, well, I have a question about something. I know this book has an answer. Let me try. Yeah. Like that seemed to be a theme.
Yeah, my favorite book in the room in my house was my study, right?
Yeah.
And we had this book line study, and we had the complete works of Shakespeare. We had Black inventors. We had a beautiful Bible. My parents were not religious, but we had a beautiful Bible, which caused me to want to pick it up and read it because it was gold. I think there are pretty pictures in there. I think that you're right.
Just having it in the home.
In your home. I mean, there's study after study shows that just having books in your house makes all the difference because of that. Because you're discovering it yourself. It's yours, however you're going to come into it. And having them everywhere. I was just out of town and met one of my favorite people who's out of New York, Alvin Irby, who is Barbershop Books. I don't know if the two of you know about it. It is an amazing thing. He's actually creating lessons and books for Black boys in barbershops and has populated multiple cities with this. He was a CNN hero. And that came out of where he learned to read and how he came to read, and sort of a historical, where are you going to be all the time? And I think we don't have to limit it. It should be everywhere all the time.
That's wonderful. People have really learned how to leverage barbershops. I think it would be also great to leverage nail salons. And we do have to move on, but I just want to point out that I think that putting books in places where people go, where people hang out, and especially where you have a lot of downtime, makes a lot of sense.
I just want to shout out Mr. Fentress at Dexter Barbershop, who has been cutting hair for decades and decades, who always had magazines and books at his barbershop.
Okay, so there you have it. And we did laundromats. We actually worked on laundromats.
Right. I look at the nail salon thing, though, because you're sitting there with your feet in. You're there forever. And so anyway, but yeah, listen, I want to thank you for sharing, and we've got to get you back on because you have so many stories and so much to tell. We're partners of yours and proud partners of yours, Cindy. You do great work. And when I think about the growth of what you've done from, I think maybe 3 or 4 houses in 2017 to 21 and growing now, wow. And in all of those different cities, you are a dream maker, and I'm so proud of you.
Donna, I'm really proud to be here and honored, and it's really been the neighborhoods. That's where the credit belongs.
The credit belongs to the neighborhoods, but it takes a spark, somebody who's going to help bring those neighborhoods together. And so we got to share it, right? Because people need to know that it takes somebody who gets your vision, who says, let's listen to people, let's bring people together, let's let people do the work. you're not the person who made it all happen, but you're the person who made it possible for these things to happen, because we would not have these homes without you.
Thank you.
All right. So if you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. And now it's time for shout outs. Let's start with you, Chase. Do you have any shout outs?
I do. So I want to shout out Zaire Kwabena, who some might know as Curtis Lipscomb. So LGBT Detroit, LGBT organization that's been serving the community, the Black community specifically, for 30 years. They're celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. So again, lots of celebrations that are going to be happening, but an organization that has supported so many people who needed a safe space. One of the first organizations, Black-centered LGBTQ organizations in the nation, that actually owns their own physical space. They're on Greenfield, just south of 8 Mile. So he's doing great work, him and his team. So I wanted to shout out Zaire.
All right. Cindy, do you have any?
I'm going to shout out Orlando today, just because you already mentioned it, but I think he's one of the most authentic individuals I know. And I love everything that he's doing, and that today's his first day on a new gig.
Yeah.
So
I kind of wish I was here with him on his first day in the new gig. I'm like, I miss him and being able to talk to him about it. It's like when your child comes first day of school and they have to go somewhere else. It's like, no, I need to find out how it was. Not that he's my child, but Anyway, I want to shout out Charles Walker, who is the board chair of Eastside Community Network. On Saturday, my husband and I went to this Eastside Golf Classic or community event at the Rackham Golf Club. They couldn't have it in Detroit because there's a change of management. But anyway, so Selena Johnson from Hollywood Golf invited us because we're having our own golf outing this year, the second annual. And she says, get to know some golfers. I've never played golf. And Charles Walker, who is really, 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 people may know him from food, but he is a really good golfer, was on our team. And I felt bad about slowing him down, but he walked myself and my husband through 9 holes of golf. And by the time we were done, I knew what clubs to use for which. I actually got the ball up in the air a couple times. He brought so much patience and such great specific advice. He's a good guy. And I just wanted to acknowledge not only is he our board chair, not only is he working on Double Up Bucks for his organization. I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, he also is just a great golfer and friend. So thank you, Charles.
Beautiful.
And I want to also acknowledge Crystal Eason, Dr. Crystal Eason, who's a long-term friend of mine, who had me do something on Friday. I'm still not sure what it was, but it was one of the most spiritually beautiful things I've done in a long time. Thank you, Crystal, for really creating an opportunity for me. Sometimes you just do things because somebody asks you and you don't know why. And although I still don't know why we did this, nobody really understood what we were trying to do. She had this idea, let's bring people together and do something that was really healing, and it was. Thank you, Crystal. And before we part today, I just want to remind people, if you don't know, that we have Playlist Live Detroit on Wednesday at 7 p.m. at Bricks Wine on Franklin Street. So if you can look on our Facebook page, and we'll be sharing more about it. But this is an opportunity to come and celebrate with music. Myself, Orlando, and also Kari Frazier from Detroit is Different are doing this the first Wednesday of every month. Anyway, so thank you so much for listening. The Detroit Playlist Live is again this Wednesday, and we look forward to seeing you join us there.